Hey guys, Mr. Reese here to help you out with your Algebra 2 quarterly review. So let's go ahead and get this started. This will be a longer video, so at any time, I'd recommend pausing the video, trying some stuff on your own, and getting through that. All right, so first off, in Chapter 4, we looked at the vertex form of a parabola. The vertex form is y equals a times x minus h in parentheses squared plus k. So we got this example here. We're going to try to find the key information. All right, so first off here, we're looking for the vertex. The vertex is at hk. H is the number subtracted from the x, so that would be 2. And then k is the number being added on at the end, and this would be -4. One thing you could always do with these is you could type them into Desmos or graphing calculator and just kind of verify that. All right, the axis of symmetry is x equals h. So if we wanted to name that here, we are going to say x equals h is 2. So there we go. All right, to determine whether the graph is a minimum or maximum, we're going to look at the A. If the A is a positive, it's a U shape. If it is negative, then it is a sad face. All right, so if we look here that this is A is a -3, meaning the vertex is a max. Okay. Then we want to look at the zeros. The zeros is where does the graph cross the x-axis or when y equals 0. We're going to try to figure that out. All right, so if we have a graphing calculator, we can pretty much just plug this in, get our answer. If not, we got to do a little bit of math here. Okay, so the zeros, we're going to make y equal to 0, and we're going to solve for x. So I started putting the variables here. Good morning. Let's actually put the numbers in. Alrighty, so we got -3 times x minus 2 squared minus 4. Okay, so if we're going to try to get the x by itself, we got to add 4 over to the other side. So 4 equals -3 times x minus 2 squared. We're going to divide by -3. Both sides. All right, we get, and it's okay if we put decimals down here. This would be -1.3 repeating. Okay, and then we need to take the square root to get rid of this. All right, now the square root of the negative cannot happen. All right, so there are no real zeros. All right, the other thing that says we can do is we can look at the table and see if there are any. Yeah, this graph does not cross the x-axis. All right, the y-intercept, though, we can figure out there will always be a y-intercept. The y-intercept is when x equals 0. So you're going to take your equation here, and we're going to just basically plug in 0 for x and solve. All right, so we got 0 minus 2 is -2. Then you have to square the -2, which would be +4. Then you're going to times that by 3, or -3 actually, that's -12. And then I started writing 4, that's -4 at the end. -16. So the y-intercept is at 0, -16. You can always use Desmos to figure this out. Hey, morning, Chris. All right, next, standard form. Okay, standard form, we're going to basically look at the same thing. But what we need to do first is to find the axis of symmetry. We want to find our h by using the formula -b over 2a. So remember, the number in front is your a. So in this example, a equals 1. The number in front of the x is the b. So in this case, b would be -2 or -4. What am I talking about? And then c is the number at the end. This would be 5. So the vertex here, we can figure out h by doing -b is -4 over 2 times a is 1. So that'd be a +4 over 2, which is 2. So that's how we can figure out our axis of symmetry. All right, yeah, we got that right there. Then to figure out our k, we have to plug that number back into the equation. So you can see we can take that 2 and we can square it. -2, okay, we get 1. Okay, and then after that is pretty much the same thing that we would do. All right, so let's try this problem here. Let's try to find the axis of symmetry. So we got to do, or the vertex first. Let's find h, which is negative b over 2a. So we got negative, our b is negative 2, and 2 times our a is 1. That's the number in front. All right, so that's a positive 2 over 2, so the h is 1. Then our k, we're going to take this number here. We're going to replace all the x's with that. So what is 1 squared minus 2 times 1 minus 5? I don't know why I put that parenthesis at the end there. Don't need it. All right, so that'd be 1 squared is 1, minus 2 times 1 is 2, minus 5. 1 minus 2 minus 5 is negative 6. So the vertex is at 1, negative 6. The axis of symmetry is x equals h, and our h number is 1. All right, is this a min or a maximum? Well, we use our same rules. Our a is positive. Positives make a smiley face, so this would be a minimum. All right, our zeros. Okay, we want to figure out when does this equation equal 0. All right, to determine that, we want to see if we can factor this, okay, or we can plug it into Desmos. You know, remember with Desmos, let's just do that real quick. It's going to be a little messy on my screen here, but you can just go ahead, get to Desmos. We'll type the equation in. Have a whole bunch of other work on here we don't really need to see. All right, so we'll type the equation in, x squared minus 2x minus 5. All right, we can just click on the points. We have that. So negative 4.45 and 3.45 would be our zeros. If we wanted to, we could use the quadratic formula to do that. So the zeros are negative 1.45, and then the other one was at 3.45. All right, the y-intercept, we can go through and click that. But remember, if we have standard form, the y-intercept is just going to be the c number. So it's going to be at the point 0, negative 5. All right. Then if we're going to graph this here, we would go through, start with the vertex, which is at 1, negative 6, and work our way up. Or we can use our graphing calculator. If we go to Desmos here, let's pull that back up. What I want you to do is just get the table by clicking the gear icon, convert to table, and getting 5 points at least. Okay, so we know 1 is in the middle. We got 2 and 3. We can get a couple more here. So you can plot and click on Desmos to get your other points to graph. Okay. So let's go through this next one here. I'm going to clear off all this mess. Let's graph this. I'm going to have Desmos up here to help us out. All right, so if we want to use Desmos here, it might be easier just to do y equals, and then type the equation in. Negative 2 parentheses x plus 5 squared minus 3. Okay, we kind of have an idea what the graph should look like. We can click on it, and the vertex is right at negative 5, 3, which makes sense. Our h is negative 5. That's what's being subtracted. And then our k is negative 3. So negative 5, negative 3. And then we want to make our table. So remember in the table, you put your vertex in the middle. You go 2 above it. Let's see, that would be negative 4 and negative 3. You go 2 below it, negative 6 and negative 7. And then you either plug those numbers in on your own, or using a graphing calculator like Desmos, you can convert to the table, and you're just going to type those numbers in. Negative 7, negative 6, negative 5, negative 4, negative 3. And you should see a pattern here. Okay, if you pick the right numbers, you got the correct vertex. All right, we got negative 11, then negative 5, then negative 3, then negative 5, and then negative 11. It goes through. All right, so we got, let's see, negative 5 right here. And then negative 11 is even further below, but we got the table. We can pretty much just graph it like so. All right, now on the other side, we have standard form. So with standard form, oh, it looks like a graph too is a little crazy. So we'll be all right. Same thing, type it in, but make sure you do y equals. You got negative x squared plus 2x plus 1. Oh, right, we can click on it. We can get the vertex. The vertex is at 1, 2. And then we're going to make our table. We're going to put 1 in the middle. And also put 2 here. But then we're going to go 2 above that. We got 2, 3, 2 below that, 0, -1. I believe if we convert to the table, we might already have those numbers on here. Yeah. Oh, we just don't have 3. There we go. All right, so let's type those numbers in. We got -1 is at -2, 0 is at 1, 1 is at 2, 2 is at 1, 3 is at -2. Got the nice pattern going on here. So let's plot those points. Okay, so -1 is at -2. It's right here. 0 is at 1. 1 is at 2. All right, 2 is at 1, and 3 is at -2. Not so bad. Okay. So moving on to the next part of our chapter 4, our quarterly, we have our factoring. So part 2, we went through a lot of different types of factoring. First thing we did was GCF factoring. So greatest common factoring, you're going to look at all 3 numbers here. We got 3, 12, and 9. Try to figure out the biggest number that we can divide them both by. We can divide everything by 3. And then check to see if they have any variables in common. Well, they all have x's, but they just have at least 1, even though, okay, those ones have 2, but that one only has 1. And they all have a y, and they only have 1 each. All right, so that's our GCF. Then what we're going to do is we're going to divide every number by 3 and get rid of an x and a y from from all of 3 of them. All right, so 3 divided by 3 is 1. And then if we had an x squared, got rid of an x, that means there's 1 left over. Same thing with y. If we had y squared, got rid of a y, we would have 1 left over. Moving on here with the 12. 12 divided by 3 is 4. We had x squared, got rid of an x, we'd still have 1 left over. We had a y and got rid of the y, there'd be no more y, so we're not going to put down a y. All right, and then 9 divided by 3 is 3. We had an x, got rid of an x, there's no x's. If we had a y, got rid of a y, there'd be no more y. And so there we go. There's the GCF factoring. All right, next, the riddle problems. These are your standard trinomials. With the standard trinomials, usually we made our x and we try to figure out what 2 numbers can multiply to give us 16, add together to get the middle number, -10. We got to think here to multiply to positive, add to get a negative. Both of them have to be negative. Let's see, 4 times 4 is 16. No, that doesn't work. 8 and 2. All right, so that's the magic combination that works. So our answer would be n minus 8 and n minus 2. All right, on the other side here, we got same thing. We're going to figure out what 2 numbers multiply together to give us -50, add together to get -5. All right, so one answer is going to have to be positive, one's going to have to be negative. And that'd be like, what, 5 and 10? And we would have to do a 5 and a -10 to get a -5. All right, so we got an x plus 5 and an x minus 10. Okay. After we did that, then we started solving using those. So what we have to do first is factor. And you can kind of see, hopefully you remember what this, when we solve, when we're trying to figure out what they actually equal, we still factor. Okay, well, 2 numbers multiplied to give us 16, add together to get 10. All right, that's 8 and 2. We just kind of did that problem. So we got p plus 8 and p plus 2. And then what we need to do after that is set each one of those equal to 0. So p plus 8 equals 0 and p plus 2 equals 0. And then all we need to do to solve them, okay, in this problem here, we're going to minus the 8 over. All right, so p equals -8. That's one solution. And then over here, we'd minus the 2 over. -2 would be the other solution. Remember, if you guys want to pause the video at any time to go through and do this, You can do, practice your skills here. All right, what two numbers multiply together give us 5, add together to get -6. All right, both are going to have to be negative, and it would have to be -1 and a -5. So we got an x minus 1 and an x minus 5. All right, if we set both of those problems equal to 0, because remember, in a quadratic, we're trying to get two solutions here. All right, we would add 1 over, so x would equal 1. We would add 5 over, x would equal 5. It's pretty much just always the opposite of the factor. Okay, the other type of factoring we went over is the differences of squares. So with differences of squares, it has to be a special scenario here, meaning we have just two terms. There's a minus sign in the middle. That's what difference means. And squares mean you can take the square root of both sides. Can we take the square root of 49 and b squared? Yes, we can. Can we take the square root of 9? Yes, we can. So when we do that, we actually go through and we get two answers or two factors. The only difference is one is plus, one is minus. The first number is just the square root of the first term. So we got 49, the square root of that is 7, and v. So we put that on the front here. And then the second number is the square root of the second term. Square root of 9 is 3. So we got a 7v plus 3 and a 7v minus 3. Hey, morning, Jace. Now, when it comes to solving that, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to factor it first. One's plus, one's minus. And we take the square root of the first term. We got 2n. And then the square root of the second term is 8. Well, when we solve, we set them equal to 0. So what we're going to do to each problem here, we're going to do 2n plus 8 equals 0. We'll also do 2n minus 8 equals 0. You'll see you'll get two very similar answers here. All right, this one we got a minus 8 over, and then divide by 2. We get n equals -4 as one solution. The other one, we're going to add 8 over instead. It just means we get a positive 8. And when we divide by 2, that means we get a positive 4. Okay. So that wrapped up the second part of chapter 4. And then most recently, we did the third part of chapter 4. So remember, if you guys want to pause the video at any time, you can go ahead and do that. All right, next, if we want to solve by graphing, what we want to do here is use Desmos. It's our friend. We can also use the TI calculator. Those guys are cool. They're not our friend anymore, but, we still hang out with them. Oh, geez. Just did something. Everybody there? I think I'm good. We'll find out. Yep. Okay. It's the wrong button. Yeah, we're good. All right, so we're going to go ahead and type in our graph here. Our equation is the biggest thing you have to make sure the equation does equal 0. So we got to do x squared plus 4x minus 32 equals, actually it equals 0, but we don't type in the equals 0. All we need to do is to go through, just figure out where does it cross the x-axis. Desmos is great because if you click on it, it just tells you. So the two solutions are x equals -8. There's the one place it crosses, and x equals 4. There's the other place. So this is awesome because even if the equation is really complicated, I didn't mean to clear that out. I meant to clear this one out. We can still type it in. As long as we press the right buttons, we can then go through and graph. And in this problem, it's actually really complicated because the graph doesn't cross the x-axis. And if it doesn't cross the x-axis, we say no real solutions. Okay. All right. Next, solving by square roots. So remember, it's basically a two-step equation. We just need to take the square root at the end, and we get two answers. All right. So in this problem here, we're going to add 5 over to the other side, and we get 9x squared is equal to, 139 plus 5, that is 144. The second thing we do is we do the second step, we divide by 9, and we get x squared is equal to, oh man, what is that? I don't feel like doing math this morning. Calculator time. 144 divided by 9, it's what, 16? All right, and then we take the square root. Whenever we take the square root, we just have to remember we get two answers, a positive and a negative, so we can use the plus or minus sign, and the square root of 16 is 4. So this next problem, the same thing. We're going to subtract 5 from 21. We get 36a squared is equal to, okay, if we minus 5, that would be 16. And then if we divide by 36, lovely, we get a decimal, but that's okay. We don't have to be scared of decimals. 0.4 repeating. And then we're going to take the square root of that. If we take the square root of 0.4 repeating, we get a equals plus or minus, we get 0.6 repeating, or 0.67 if we're going to round to the second decimal. All right, and then one of the last things we did, right, is the quadratic formula. So with the quadratic formula, we got the equation. Hopefully you got this memorized. We got x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Just writes itself. So let's get this started. First thing we want to do is 5 steps here. We're going to plug in a, b's, and c's. All right, our b is 1 here. So we got negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 squared minus 4 times our a is 2 and our c is negative 3 all over 2 times a is 2. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is let's multiply these all out. So negative times 1 is negative 1, plus or minus 1 squared, or 1 times 1 is 1. And then if we got a minus 4 times 2 times minus 3, those two minuses are going to cancel each other out. That would be a 24. And then 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, moving on here, we need to simplify inside the square root. So we got negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 25 over 4. The fourth step is then we actually take the square root of that number. That's nice. The square root of 25 is 5. And then we're just going to break this up into 2 problems to solve. One of the answers is going to be negative 1 plus 5 divided by 4. And the other one is negative 1 minus 5 divided by 4. Negative 1 plus 5 is 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. So there's one solution. Negative 1 minus 4 is negative 6. And if we take negative 6 and divide it by 4, that is negative 1.5. There's your other answer. Alrighty. So same thing over here. We're going to plug everything in. We got x equals negative, our b is negative 5, plus or minus the square root of b squared is negative 5 squared minus 4 times a is 2 and b is negative 75, or c is negative 75. Awesome. And then all over 2 times a is 2. All right, let's do some multiplication here. Negative 5 is a positive 5. Plus or minus 5 squared is 25. Well, this is going to be fun. Negative 4 times 2 times negative 75. That is a big number. It is 600. And then 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, so we got x equals, we got 5 plus or minus the square root of, if we add those together, that'd be 625. All right, and then we're going to take the square root of 625. I think that actually comes out nice. Oop. When we take the square root, we don't put the symbol there. Square root of 625, is that 25? It sure is. Over 4. Okay, so let's break this up into 2 problems. One problem is 25 or 5 plus 25 divided by 4. The other one is 5 minus 25 divided by 4. All right, 5 plus 25 is 30, and 30 divided by 4 is 7.5. All right, on the other side here, 5 minus 25, that'd be negative 20. And if we divide that by 4, that's a negative 5. Okay, so here's the review worksheet. There's the answers. Hopefully, if you have any questions, you go back, watch this video, see if you need some help. The other thing we have to do is the edge elastic. So remember with this edge elastic here, you can definitely take your time with it. Go through, check your answers. So if you got this first problem here that says factor the polynomial, you have unlimited checks on the review. So you can go through and you can be like, all right, what two numbers multiply together, 36, add together to get negative 15. If you think it's A, you can go ahead and click that. And then there is a check, or actually, is there a check here? Should be. But if you get it wrong, you can always go back and see it again. All right. If you guys have any questions, make sure you ask. I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one.